side chat. Hello, room. Did you guys hear our side chats as we were playing? Oh my God. I hope Dre, you didn't hear me saying anything really too untoward about you. No, I'm joking. He's with the team. We'll give it a couple more minutes to let a few more people kind of come into the room. We were also streaming to face used to it. That's good. We were gonna stream to Facebook, but I'm not sure that we're gonna do that today. But I will definitely put this on Facebook as we start. Hi Ruby, hi everybody. Well, just give us a sign. Tell us where you're watching from, what area you're watching from, and what you do. Do you know what I mean? That'd be really helpful. Just drop that into chat so we get a sense of who's in the room, and also kind of maybe it'd be also interesting to know why you've decided to attend the session today. London, cool. London. Now we got more people joining. Lanka, fantastic. Fantastic. Where else? Anybody else from anywhere else? Ruby, why are you interested in working in sports, or do you work in sports already? Just give a couple of minutes for people to answer. We'll give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started, and then people will join in as and when. I'm not sure if people are responding to my answers, but I'm sure they'll pop up in chat. Thank you all. Actually, I'm not going to give it a couple of minutes. I'm going to start and then let people kind of jump in as and when. But thank you all for coming to the TV Collective's Career Clinic. Very interested in sports. Fantastic, Ruby. Hopefully we'll be able to answer all your questions today and you can get to speak to the panel and get the information that you need. So as I was saying, I'm Simone from the TV Collective. We are a resource specifically that supports people of colour generally that want to work in TV or are working in TV. And with all the kind of sporting activities that we've had over the last month, and Olympics started, I think, this week, it felt like a real opportune time to talk about working in sports and what are the opportunities that are available and how do we take full advantage. So it's a real pleasure to have such a great panel with us today. We've got Taslim Hazim, and I apologise if I say that wrong.
It's all right. It's okay. It's Hasham Laywood. Yes, it's not the easiest, is it?
Sorry. No problem. I'm dyslexic, so I always say people's names wrong. So I apologise. But we've got Taz with us from ITV. In a minute, I'm gonna let you guys introduce and talk a little bit about your work. And we've got Sarah Green from Sunset and Vine as well. And it's a real pleasure for us to be here. And we were just speaking, I'm not sure if any of you guys heard, that we're an all-female panel today talking about sports. That's really progressive. That's very exciting. But before I go on too much, Taz, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, your job, and just a little bit about your day job. That'd be really cool.
Sure, yeah. I'm Taz. I work as a senior production manager at ITV in ITV Sport. And across the 5 years I've been there, worked across the European qualifiers, Six Nations, French Open, football here and there, dipping in and out of horse racing. And now, as of December last year, I look after all of the horse racing for sport.
That's fantastic. And Sarah, do you want to do the same thing? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I'm Sarah Green. I'm one of the executive producers at Sunset and Vine, and I also have the title of head of women's sport. And one of the things that we were just talking about beforehand, before we joined, was that is as much about representing women who work in sport as much as it is about work business of women playing sport and women athletes. As my day job, I look after the Red Bull Mountain Bike World Cup Series. I don't know if anybody's into mountain biking, but if you want to see people throwing themselves down a mountain and trying to kill themselves on a regular basis, that's the one for you. So that's a big series. We've done 8 events globally this year, which, as you can imagine, has been a huge challenge. And we're looking forward to 12 next year: USA, Canada, Brazil, and then Europe. So that's going to be another huge challenge. I also do a lot of triathlon. I've done a lot of women's football in the past. I'm also sort of dabble around the edges of the cricket output, and and Henley Royal Regatta coming up as well. So that's another one. That's my annual Henley holiday, doing some rowing, which is much more fun than it sounds. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, me and Taz had a conversation prior to doing this session, and it really struck me that there was kind of differences between sports and the kind of work. So I usually work in a lot of scripted, and we speak to a lot of scripted and people working in scripted and unscripted space, but not that much about sports. So I just kind of, Taz, what would you say is the kind of main difference with working in sports than kind of the other spaces within TV?
Yeah, so the BBC I worked at in drama and children's, and I think the biggest difference is I see it, there's an event happening. There's an event happening whether we're broadcasting it or not, whether TV are there or not. So the relationship that we have with all the governing bodies, either the race courses, FIFA, FA, that event's going to happen, and we have to become a part of that and cover that as best we can. Not whereas others are created. TV is created from scratch, where it's commissioned. You have a script and you create the set, the scene, the documentary. Whereas sport, it's almost like event organising. The event's happening, and we have to really bed into whatever's happening on location, on site, and get the access that we need and get the best coverage we can. For me, was the biggest difference. And from a live point of view, which is all I really worked on within sports, is, once it happens. There's no second chances. You can't re-record, you can't rehearse and go back and, get the horse to jump again, or, a footballer to score a goal again. So, yeah, for me, that's the biggest difference.
And Sarah, would you agree that's the biggest difference? And also, what are the kind of key roles that you can have in sport? And again, I'm coming from a place of real ignorance, so I do.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, I think, picking up on what Taz has just said, for me, the majority of sport that we do, not all of it, but the majority of output is live. So, and then the moment you're into a live broadcast situation, there is a huge range of jobs, craft jobs, across the piece. So anything from, say, for our football side of things, from directors and vision mixers to EVS operators and VT coordinators, all of them actually really need to understand what they're watching. They really need to be able to understand the sporting environment. And the big thing for people like us is, we're hired guns. So we might be doing rowing one week, mountain bike the next, then on to rugby, and then on to, sevens. So you might be going, rugby union to rugby sevens, very different sports. So there is a craft to turning around a program and getting output out and live streams or world feeds or host broadcast, whatever that may be. But in order to satisfy your audience, who 9 times out of 10 really know their sport, you have to do it with some authenticity. And you can come at it with a great deal of authenticity if you are passionate about sport as well. So I would say it's quite an unusual industry in that it really, part of our industry, part of the TV industry, in that it really, really helps if you are interested in sport. It isn't a deal breaker, but it really helps tell that story. And that's the difference for me. I mean, I came from children's as well, BBC Children's as well, in fact, Tent, and worked on things like Gardener's World and Hairy Bikers and all sorts of different things, and then did a big stint at CBBC. So it's been very useful to take all of those learnings and put them over to sport, but sport's a really different beast, and I would say it's really hard work as well compared to other things, because sport happens when sport happens, and the hours can be very long and they're not particularly sociable. So you have to really like what you do.
Yeah, because I was going to say, and I think that you touched on it, but so that kind of passion for sports is really important. And do you have to be kind of passionate across sports, across the piece, or could you have a real passion in one particular sport? Taz,
am I allowed to slightly disagree here?
You are allowed
to. Only because I remember the first time I went in to be interviewed by the exec in football at the BBC, and I sat there and I was like, I'm not that bothered about sport, but I worked on the panel at the BBC and they were like, this would be good for you, go and work for sport. And I was like, oh, okay, if I have to. Dad watches it, you know, I watch a little bit at home if it's a World Cup, but I sat in this boardroom literally, and 4 male football enthusiastic execs around, and my senior production manager, first time having met them, and they just said, "Oh, so who do you follow? Which football team?" And I thought, I don't follow a football team now. What can I cannot enter this job pretending to follow a football team and carry on saying, it would be Leicester, by the way, if it had been one. You know, and so I said, kind of follow the World Cups, and I love going to pubs, watching the big sports, you know, if it's the Six Nations, love that, but otherwise I can't really say I follow. They went, "Oh, no, that's fine. As long as, you know," sometimes it's quite hard because you get so enthralled in a gallery or when you're sat in a truck watching something. They say it's probably best that you don't, because then you're actually covering the output and you're actually really watching it technically and from your PM perspective, rather than just following the actual football. Obviously, it's very exciting to be there. And I found the longer I've worked in it, the more I'm enjoying it and the more I love it. For instance, horse racing, I knew nothing about in December, absolutely nothing. But the transferable skills are still there. You know, I know my teams, I know what happens on, so I know what it takes to set up and build an OB, which was key. And now I'm really loving getting to know flat seasons and jumps and jockeys and all the terminology. It's exciting to also learn along the way. And I don't know what Sarah thinks, but from a producer's point of view within ITV, you don't need to be or have to specialise in a particular sport. You really do have to have quite a knowledge, or at least do your research before you create a VT or create something, a piece for, you know, racing, for instance. We got the rights to it 4 years ago. There weren't many people within sport, producers, that knew much about racing, but having done the research and working on it now, they, you know, so many of them actually love it. And so I think you can pick up your passion for it.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, I remember when I first went to work at Sunset and Vine, you know, I came from the BBC, and you know, in my interview I was asked, you know, do you sail? So I said, I've been on a ferry to Ireland, you know, no, I've never sailed, you know, but I can make a TV program, you know, I can do that. And I can bring that to it. So I absolutely would agree with you from that point of view. We've had it the same with mountain biking. When we first won the mountain bike contract, we're not mountain bike specialists. We know an awful lot now. And I think that's where the passion comes in. You have to, as you've said, you've invested some time and some effort into getting to know what it is that you are streaming or broadcasting or putting out there, because, and I go back to this authenticity thing, you are found out very swiftly by your audience if you aren't if you aren't broadcasting with an authentic voice on these things. And so, yes, first and foremost, you know, are you interested in making TV, you know, or content, whatever that content is, and is that your passion? Fantastic, tick, great, because that's hard work all by its own self. You know, it's not a 9-to-5 job. And then you add on sport, which is not a 9-to-5 job and largely done at weekends. You have to really believe in what you do, and you want to succeed, and you want to actually say, I can add something to this, and that will absolutely push you forward to do it. So I would absolutely agree with you. You know, I still can't sail, but I've worked on the America's Cup. I've done the Volvo Ocean Race. You know, I know which is the pointy end and I know which is the back, you know, but I could probably name a few sails. But on occasion, my boss used to like to point to a small boat miles away on the horizon and say, Sarah, what's that? You know, it's a boat. That's, you know, but I've worked on those things, and as you say, got to know the athletes and the athletes' stories and their background and what they've done before and what motivates them. And again, if you can clue into that as a sports fan, you're already there. That's the nice thing about sport, actually, coming back to what Taz has said, you get to work on a range of things. You know, one day you might be doing football, the next day you might be doing cricket, the third day you might be doing some, you know, watching some idiots throw the themselves down a mountain on a bike?
I think that's over time, over the last few years, I found that's changed, whether it was across, you know I worked for a short time at BT, freelancing, and BBC and ITV with, the headcounts for staffing and having to make cutbacks budget-wise. It's become important to be able to have not such a narrow perspective on, I only want to work in football, I only like golf, I only to work in TV sport. You can have a passion for one in particular, but you need to have at least an open mind and ability, or the willingness to work across a range of sports, because you're in a better standing, you're more likely to join a company that allows that, basically, because that's what we need. Is how all our producers work.
I think that's really fascinating, and I think that for a lot of people, you would expect that you need to be really, really passionate in sport before working on it, and not understanding that there's so many elements, like you said, the live. And I suppose most people have been lucky to be in a live set, that excitement and the adrenaline and that in itself can be quite passionate just to be in a live set. You know what I mean? But having some kind of understanding or appreciation of sport is important, but not necessarily having to be a specialist. And I find it really interesting. We've got a few questions that I'm going to dive to in a minute, but also found it's interesting because I would have assumed that you would have needed to be a specialist in a particular sport. I mean, that's really fascinating that you should have an interest, but you should be able to move around. And I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's two elements to that, really. I mean, we provide a lot of the football for BT Sport. We provide a lot of their rugby. We have a contract with the ICC for their cricket. We work with Amazon Prime on football and boxing, various other areas. So I would say that we have a very healthy football silo, and we have a very, very healthy rugby silo. And the fact that you go into the rugby department or the football department, and you start and you follow through a season, the nature of any job is that the more you do it, the more you learn. And, that is it. And there is an onus upon you to buy into that as well. And there's also something about working on something like in the football department or the rugby department, particularly, and indeed the cricket department, in that you're doing the same thing over and over again. So again, your craft becomes very, very good. And that, as Taz said, that then becomes a very much a transferable skill, which is great to go into other areas as well. But I keep coming back to this authenticity. It is about, it as a sports fan, a generic sports fan, if you're talking to another sports fan in the same way that, you went into that panel and you were faced with, I can imagine exactly who you were faced with from the BBC football department, and you would immediately start to think that there can be moments when they speak a different language because it's not your language. It's an absolute nerd sports fans language, and it comes with time that you can. That's really useful to some ways, because when you're editorializing, you've got people who can say, oh God, what happened in that third match, or that third round playoff, we've got this, that and the other. And somebody will go, oh yeah. And you've got some absolute nerd who can give you facts and figures and who scored in the third minute. And no, so-and-so was sent off. No, it wasn't sent off. It was a yellow card. They've got it. And you think, thank you. That's great. You need those people. You also need people who can make TV.
No, I totally agree. We've got a few questions coming. Somebody's asked, we've got a question from Dre who's asked, my question would be, what would be your advice to getting into sports from scratch? Is it better to try and get in an entry-level role in any TV, area, or is it better to just lend yourself, or you kind of focusing on wanting to work in sports? So let me make sure that I've got it right. So let me just read that. Is it better to try and get an entry role in any area of TV, or is there a role that lends itself better for you to get a foot in the door in terms of sports? Sarah, let me throw that to you and then tell.
I would say if you specifically want to work in sport, you need to do your research as to who is making sport programming, basically, and target them. It's quite an easy thing to do now to just to Google is your friend, go in, see see who the independent production companies are, but also ITV, BT Sport, Sky, BBC. You know, there's an awful lot of sport, and also, you know, we can't ignore the effect of last 18 months on our industry as well. You know, when people couldn't actually go to watch sport live, we had to make an awful lot more of it. And when you need to make an awful lot more of it, you need an awful lot more people. So there are opportunities out there. So if you are really interested in working in sport rather than working generically in TV, and I think Taz and I have both come from originally from different areas of TV and moved across. But if you want to work in sport, target that first and foremost. You know, that would be my advice. And there are lots of opportunities out there, and just keep asking. You know, things change every single day. We might not need you today, but we probably will need you tomorrow. You know, and it's the people that keep coming back that they're the ones that we're keen on.
And I always say that, and I think that's such good advice across the board. That when you're wanting to get into a certain area, that sometimes you can knock on a door and you're being told no, and then you automatically, sometimes you think it's about me and I'm not good enough, and you internalize it, or you go away and you don't try and you give up. Actually, the reality is that this industry changes on a daily basis, and because you're not needed today doesn't mean you're not needed tomorrow. So actually, a lot of this part of working, whether it's sports or the industry at large, is building contacts and then keeping in contact with them and building those contacts, because at some point, once you've been in contact, Sarah will say, oh my God, Simone has emailed me 10 times. Simone, listen, I've got this. And that tends to be how it works. Yeah. So it's so important to find, connect with those people and then find reasons to keep in contact. And that brings me really nicely to when you, like Sarah says, you can Google, and I'm a great believer that we watch programs and we're really lucky because everyone's names comes up at the end of the program, so you know automatically the right people that you should get in contact. When you're watching credits, who are the best people that you can be contacted to kind of get your foot into the door? So like I always advise people, I do a lot of one-to-one coaching, and I always advise people to watch the programs and think about who's your head of production and who's this and who's that, and these are the key people that you can contact. Who are those people in sports when you're watching and you're looking at the credits? Who are the people that you should be reaching out to if you're interested?
I personally think if you're going to go in from scratch, you don't want to be contacting the head of sport or, the head of production, from my point of view, because you'll be lucky for a response. People who staff, for instance, areas are good. So if in sport, there's someone in particular who gets runners in, and a production management team for me is usually the area to go, because so if there's a production manager, they have a little know about everything and everyone. So if it's a producer role you're looking for, a researching role, or you're coming in as a runner, or you just want to come and shadow, it's the production management team. Even if they can't directly give you that role, they know who can.
That's really helpful, because somebody else, so there's a question also got sent in a little prior in advance, and someone else is the HR manager the best person to contact when seeking work experience? From what you were saying, maybe not. The production management team seems to be a better place to start, would you say?
Well, it's a bit strange like that, isn't it? I suppose it's with any job that you want to go into. If you want to shadow and you're coming in from scratch, you're not necessarily applying for a position. HR would look after, possibly, I know from my TV perspective, across the whole of TV. If there's a particular area you want to go into, it wouldn't be a HR, person that you'd get in touch with. I get a lot of people contacting me who want to floor manage, vision mix, EVS ops, editors, runners, everything. And if I can't get them in directly, I'll keep their CV, respond to them. And like you said earlier, persistence pays. You get a CV 6 months ago, and then tomorrow someone drops out of, a runner drops out, or an EVS op, and suddenly that day, sometimes it's luck, that day someone's emailed you and said, oh, don't forget, I contacted you 6 months ago, I'm still around. And you're like, oh God, great, someone's dropped out tomorrow. Can you come in tomorrow? That happens a number of times. And, you're sometimes too busy to go filtering through your CVs to go and remember a year ago you got contacted by someone. It just happens to be the right time, right place, right time. So persistence and keeping that contact really does pay off.
Yeah. And also, you've been somewhere and you know, you're lucky enough to have that first break, and you know, you've gone in and you've made yourself really useful. That's a big part of it as well. Make yourself really, really useful and smile. You know, nobody likes, you know, somebody who's sitting there looking as if they're completely falling asleep any moment. So as long as you look enthusiastic and you go at it well and you say, right, I've done that, what else can I do? And when you leave that job, you know, because these runner jobs are often very short-lived, say to your production manager, go and find your production manager, say, thank you very much. Thank you for that. I had a fantastic time. Please, if you hear of any more opportunities, or you know anybody else is looking, would you put my name forward? Because it is, our industry is so much about the networking. And if you take the time just to go back to your production manager, say thank you, they will really appreciate it, because nobody ever thanks the production managers. Nobody. They shout at them when nothing's there, but they don't thank them. Thank your production manager and say, if you've got anything else for me, or if you know of anything else, because that's the other thing that production managers do as well, is they talk to each other all the time, always talking to each other. Do you know anybody who could? Have you got anybody available who could? Go back in, say thank you, ask them to pass your name on. It's the best thing you can do.
And again, I mean, like some of this, the advice that you're offering is so important, because it's not just for sports. That kind of thing, that when you're working on a production, actually acknowledging the production manager and just saying thank you, and like you said, if that doesn't happen very often, then automatically you stand out and people remember you, right?
It is a confidence thing, and I completely acknowledge that as well. You know, not everybody has the benefit of, you know, our years of experience in this, and being able to learn to put your hand up and say, hello, can I talk to you about this? But you don't have to be that confident to go back in and say thank you.
Exactly.
That's, you know, and it's so appreciated, you know, it really, really is. And it gets you noticed. And that's what the most important thing about this is. How can I be noticed? You can notice by smiling, getting on with your job, asking if there's anything else I can do, saying thank you.
And
honestly, will go a long way.
Also, I hear the confidence thing. I hear it to an extent. But actually, I don't know if you guys agree, but I don't know that this industry is a space where you can be really, you got to be kind of and you got to fake it until you make it. So if you don't feel confident, you've got to be in that room, like you say, Sarah, that big smile on your face, big person, you know, lots of energy. But then you can go home and feel shy and timid. This space is not the space for that. I think, and
sure, yeah, Taz will back me up on this. You know, our jobs are incredibly fast paced. Things are moving all the time. Things are changing all the time. We are, you know, we are often quite distracted, particularly when we're on an event, you know, because we're thinking about the next thing and being ahead of things. And what I personally appreciate enormously is somebody who smiles at me. If I walk in through a door thinking, oh God, and I've got somebody sitting there who's giving me a nice big smile, can I help you with anything? Yes, you can. Come with me. I've got just the job for you. And invariably I have. And that's, you know, I'm not talking about being a pest and hanging on to my ankle as I drag you along, you know, like some scene from Drop the Dead Donkey as I walk through the door. But, you know, smile, you know, it's a huge, it gets you noticed.
Guys, getting that mirror stuff.
Just going back again, I'm going to be slightly controversial here, just because I think the way what's great about TV now, you still have to be thick-skinned. You really do. I mean, the number of times I've been shouted at, sworn out, whatever, it's not right, but it's happened. But you do need to have that kind of thick skin, and just what's happening more and more now is being yourself. I like that you don't have to do any more. When I started, for instance, I had to be like everyone around me. You had to be the loud one to be noticed. You had to be the, you know, loudest in the room, or the one that, you know, the one who stayed up latest drinking on an OB or something. Now you can be yourself. The opportunities and people recognizing people from different cultural, educational backgrounds, economic backgrounds, where not everyone wants to stay up on an OB and, you know, socialize. It's a big part of our jobs, I have to say. Sometimes the best part. But it's also, you know, you can't afford to be shy. You're right, Sarah's right. There just isn't room. But in terms of still being yourself, I think we're recognizing more and more people from, you know, different diverse backgrounds. You don't have to be like everyone around you to fit in. in fact, bringing in something that's new, different, you know, your own stance and outlook on life really does make a difference. I think ITV are recognising that more and more. They're just brilliant at, you know, calling the diversity, you know, having lots of training and allowing people to be themselves, and not the way TV necessarily has always been, which has been loud and shouty and, you know, quite a harsh environment. So I think it's changing in that way for the better.
I think that's really important. And I think, I mean, I do think that you can't be a shrinking violet, and you've got to be able to ask for what you want and know how to assert yourself. And even if you feel a bit scary, but I do agree that if your nature is, if you're a little bit more introverted as a person, that you don't feel that you've got to go in and turn it up and pretend to be something that you're not. You've got to be yourself. But within that, I don't know if you agree, I just don't think it's an industry where people do need you to speak up for yourself, and you do need to kind of take charge of yourself, unless you kind of get a little bit left behind.
So absolutely. Yeah, hard work ultimately will pay off, whether you're running on site, you know, you're making yourself useful, as Sarah said, asking if there's anything else to be done, wherever it shows ultimately.
We notice good work. We notice good work just as much as we notice bad. And we might not have the time to say at the time, well done, that's brilliant, keep going. But we notice. And you know, and if you come to us at the end of it and say, is there anything I could do better? We will share that information with you very gladly. We want you to succeed. You know, we want to see you again. That's the thing. That's been absolutely rubbish, in which case, no.
What's also interesting, and I think this leads on quite nicely, Taz, you were talking about kind of the diversifying of sports, or how the culture of sports is slightly changing. And we've got a panel of women, and we've got a question. Do you have any advice for women in this space? Things you wish you knew when you were coming in? And also I want to ask about people of colour and all the different diversities. Is sports quite diverse and quite a welcoming space from people of different backgrounds, or does it still tend to be quite an old boys school club that we still got to kind of, you know, mix it up a little bit? That's kind of 2 questions in one.
I going back to the one thing I do differently is I would be more myself. I would have been more myself, because becoming more and more myself and speaking up is, you know, getting me what I want ultimately. And it's, you know, what we need to do as women, anyone from a diverse background, and in sport in particular, you know, there isn't room for shrinking violets. And I think when I started in particular, TV was just such a new glamorous world. You know, I was a runner at the BBC in BBC Resources, and it was just like, this is amazing. Oh my God, I've just got to just hide away. But that's the one thing I wish I'd done differently. I think I would have moved up a little quicker if I'd and started getting to where I want to be. But that's the only thing I'd particularly do differently. I've actually forgotten the second part of your question.
No, sorry, I'm not going to come back. I remembered it, so I'm going to come back. But Sarah, for you, what would you advice for women? What would you've done anything differently coming in?
No, and I would absolutely echo what Taz has said about being confident in your own skin. You know, what you have to understand is if you're in there and you're turning up on a Monday morning or a Saturday morning or whatever morning it is, you're through the door for a reason. Okay, so we've not done this out of pity. You know, you're there for a reason. We think you can do a job. It is a very, you know, quick moving thing. So to have confidence in your own ability, have confidence in the fact that, you know, you're there to contribute. Everybody has a role and you are there to contribute. And that's a fantastic thing to do. I think to echo again something that Taz said earlier on, which again is probably not the most PC thing to say, but it's a fact, and facts don't care about feelings. If somebody in sport, again, very fast moving pace, quite sort of a brusque environment quite often when we're in the thick of it, if somebody snaps at you in the heat of the moment, that's not personal. That's not personal. That isn't somebody saying to you, you're rubbish. That's somebody going, I need something else right now. And I think that there is an element of thick-skinnedness which is required in the TV industry, full stop. I think you need to do that. But I think it's probably still more of the case in sport. But the one thing that I do think is that if you are, you know, serious about wanting to find a role and a career in sport, that people do also recognize that, and they will really put an arm around you and help you along the way. You know, it's a bit like, you know, meeting mates at uni. You know, there's quite a lot of, you know, home truths delivered by mates, but there's also an awful lot of, I've got your back, come with me, I'm going to help you with this. And also, if you get, you know, if you are one of those people that can survive in that sort of industry, you will move forward, because you will have some advice, you know, some belief in yourself and your ability to contribute. It is a welcoming industry, and it's great fun, but there are moments, like any job that we do in this industry, where it's high pressure, and people, when they are under pressure, can snap a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not somebody picking on you personally.
And I would just like to add to that, because I think that, again, this is such great stuff, and not just sports, but in general. We're doing some work with our leadership. So we've got a leadership program. We've got 51 of our leaders who are kind of senior, mid-management to senior, and they're kind of looking to take their next big career step. And one of the pieces of advice or things that comes up frequently and all the time is this thing about detachment, and the importance of detachment, and understanding that even though something's being said to you, you don't have to take it on board and personalize it to yourself. That you can, you know, it's happened, like you said, somebody's had a snap at you. You can make a choice to decide how you receive that. So you can decide to take that personally and think that they're saying something personally about you. Or like Sarah said, you can decide that they've got 10,000 things coming on and they just didn't articulate themselves very well and they just snapped at me, and choose to take that up later on if you wish to.
That's the thing. Go back later when it's calmer, say, oh, you know, there was an issue there. And 9 times out of 10, we'll go, oh my God, did I do that? So sorry. You know, absolutely didn't mean to do that. That was the heat of the moment. You've done brilliantly. Get some
detachment is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
So important. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm the same as Taz. You know, the thing, you know, quite often you just sit there and think, I'll speak to you about that later. You know, you do a little note to yourself. Yeah, I'm not having that, but I'll speak to you about it later, and I'll just crack on for now. And people appreciate that. You know, ultimately, we work in a communication industry. All of us do. In TV, we are communicators. And it amazes me how often you get to the bit of the end of a slightly lumpy OB, or, you know, a slightly lumpy output, and everybody goes off and does the next thing. And you think, no, come back. Let's have a little chat for 5 minutes. And if you do that little chat for 5 minutes, work out where those lumps were, everybody walks away happier. It takes 5 minutes. It's gone. Move on. It's the way to do it.
So important. I'm going to jump back into these questions. What would you say is the best thing about working in sports? And have you ever had to work across sports you absolutely couldn't stand? And if so, what was it? Taz?
The best thing for me is people. At live events, the excitement of being at Six Nations when there's a try scored. Most of the time you're in a truck hiding somewhere, so you're in a car park, you don't get to see anything. But the atmosphere of it all, the atmosphere of sports and live events, and then the people, like Sarah said, I've never worked in a department in terms of a genre as such that's felt so like family. Whichever broadcaster you're with, sport feels very tight. You know, you see the same people, you work in the same department, or even if there's freelancers that come and go, you know, contractors, it's the same people, and everyone's lovely and kind and nice. And then the pressure suddenly changes people when you're on site, but the excitement of it is just brilliant. It's, you know, I wouldn't get my hopes up and think, right, as soon as you get onto a live event, you're going to be out there watching and sat in the crowd, because there's zero time for that. I think the first time I actually saw any kind of ball being kicked on at Twickenham was in my last year working with Six Nations, and I purposely thought, I'm not doing Six Nations next year. I've got 5 minutes. I'm going to run outside of the pitch, have a quick look, run back in. You know, it's like that. But the atmosphere of the crowds, the build-up, deadline. I do like a deadline. I do like a live event because there's a deadline. So you've got this amazing build-up, then you reach this pinnacle of, you know, something that you've all been working so hard towards, and then you see the output, and when it, you know, 9 times out of 10 it is brilliant. There's always slight hiccups in live TV, but it's brilliant, and you're so proud of that. I think, yeah, so it's not one thing. There's a combination of all of that, plus the people we work with, I think is just best thing about sport.
People, that sense of camaraderie, that sense of kind of team sounds to be really, that real sense of team and everybody needing to pull their part, and the joy when that works together sounds really amazing. Sarah, what's the best thing for you working in sport?
It is the people, and I would expand that out to the athletes as well. Actually, I think that athletes, as a breed of people, are fascinating, endlessly fascinating, and there is nothing, there's nothing more joyous than when you walk in to go and do another event, and you'll see one of the athletes, and they'll go hi, and you realise that they are just actually quite socially quite ordinary people who happen to have this incredible athletic ability, and they are just as delighted, some of them, most of them, just as delighted to come and have a chat with you and go on camera and have a chat with you. There are a few that don't want to do that, and that's absolutely fine. There's also an element of recognizing when they're in focus mode. And working out how we do that in such a way that we don't encroach, never interfere with the sporting action as such. But you work with, your teams are great. We laugh an awful lot, and as Taz has said, we sit in an OB and you suddenly get into a match, and Taz's bosses are correct. On occasions you'll suddenly shout, "Come on!" at the thing, and everybody, you'll suddenly find that we're really into this game or this race or whatever it will be, and then we will laugh an awful lot. There was one moment we were doing a big football tournament in Sweden, and 4 minutes before, I think it was a semi-final, 4 minutes before, again, as Taz has said, we were in an OB truck, in a bunker somewhere, on the outskirts of this fantastic atmosphere within the stadium, and suddenly everything went black. I mean, literally everything went black in this truck. You couldn't even see the person sitting next to you, which, when you're 4 minutes off air, is one of the scariest moments ever. And what felt like forever but probably wasn't forever, the generator sort of kicked in, and suddenly everything came up again, but graphics had gone, and people were madly getting everything back in, everything back online, and we sort of hit air, and the commentator, the presenter, was saying, "I've not got auto cue." Fine, just listen to what I'm going to say to you and just repeat it. And then we went through, and we managed to get on air, and then we went to world feed because we were doing press, so we picked up the world feed, and the laugh that went round this OB truck, we must have laughed for about 5 minutes, because it was terrifying. But you suddenly realize that the people around you are good. They're really good, and everybody did their job, and you don't get that in any other area. I've never had that in any other area of working in TV. And you just think, yeah, we're all in this together. And actually, it is teamwork. It is a team thing. You get this job done by being a really good team player.
Teamwork makes the dream work, they say, right? Another question: how do you manage your? Because like a lot of things that you talk, sports sounds quite consuming in terms of times, and like you say, most sporting events happen on the weekend or times that are kind of outside the general work time. So how do you manage your work-life balance with all the travel associated with covering sports? Do you ever find that at any times overwhelming?
You have to look for the perks in that. I've spent the last sort of 10 years on an aeroplane, which sounds fantastic. Largely, you go to the airport, your car gets you to the airport because you know that you're always leaving from Terminal 5. So again, typical thing from my point, get to Terminal 5, hand my passport over. They'll say, "Where are you going?" The US? Fine. Look, yeah. Do you know where about? Washington? Yeah, got it. And then I don't really know where I'm going. And it's got to that stage with me that actually my best bit of my traveling is landing back at Heathrow. That is the best bit of traveling to me. So you're right, that it becomes arduous. It sounds terribly glamorous, but generally you're leaving here, you're going, maybe 13 degrees here, You get on a flight for 7 hours, you land somewhere where it's sort of 32, 33. You realise you haven't got the right clothes with you. You go straight onto location. You are in a different time zone. You have to go there, put it in. As Taz said, somebody will then say, do you want to go to the bar for a drink? No, I really don't. I really want to go to bed. You try and sleep, you can't sleep. You go and do the thing again the next day. You do that for another 3 days. Then you get back and fly back to 13 degrees of heat. It isn't glamorous, but it's exciting. And you do also then have to balance the fact that you might have, I always say to people when they say, oh, I'm desperate to work in sport, I will go anywhere, I'll do anything. And I'll say, do you have a cat to feed? Because if you've got a cat to feed or a small child that you need to put into childcare, and I've been a single parent working in sport, I know how hard this is. This is coming from the heart. Make sure you're organised. You can't just be organised at work. You've got to be organised at home and carry your passport with you all the time.
Wow. Gosh, Taz, for you, how do you deal with the kind of work-life balance? Because, that's...
I have to openly, admittedly say, for a very short period of time when I started at ITV, I didn't have a life. I had, zero life.
Zero life.
I just started at ITV. I was going to make my mark. I was going to work hard. I was going to get the job done. And I did, and successfully. And then with a lot of sports, live event happens. You might get a day or two where you're not as busy. There's always work to do and planning from a production management point of view on the next event and the next event and the next event. So, you have that. You've really got to, if I look at my day-to-day work, I have to block out. I have to be really stubborn with myself and block out, half an hour to have lunch. Especially working from home, it became quite clear to me that I wasn't leaving the house. I wasn't going for a walk. But you have to look after yourself before you can do the best job you can. The other thing is when you go on site, for instance, I was in Russia for 7 weeks for the World Cup, looking after the Football World Cup in 2018. And that 7 weeks, zero time off. That's just how it is. That's sport. You're there for 7 weeks. You work every single day, 9 o'clock till 11 p.m. most of the days. I think there were 2 rest days, of which I got a morning to go and see a few sites in Russia. But you're always on call when you're on site. 1 a.m. someone's unwell. I've got to go to a Russian hospital. Basically, that's the kind of thing that happens. You're never not on call. So I think when it comes to, you have to know when you're able to have a little downtime or a bit of a life. You've got to know that, right, Tuesdays, for instance, for me right now are meetings back to back. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to get out of the house. But on Wednesday, I'm going to try and finish at 6 p.m. and go for a walk. So it's intense. The fact is, sport is 24/7. TV is 24/7. From in my role as a senior PM, I need to, even if I'm not on site, I need to be available in case something does happen, and I'm needed. And so you need to just think about yourself, look after yourself, and understand that if you're going to enter sport, you do lose a lot of your life, especially when you're first trying to make, get your foot in the door and make an impression.
Work-life balance is important, and some self-care, just being really disciplined.
Hugely. And I think employers are getting better on this. I think they are. Again, I think we're making strides in various different ways, and again, the last 18 months have made us much more aware as employers that we really need to think about the mental health of our employees. It's a much bigger issue. It sometimes feels to me that when I was starting out, that you didn't get many breaks. You certainly didn't, and you were certainly expected to suck it up a lot of the time, which is a bit of a double-edged sword now, because on the one hand, I absolutely recognise that and can see that we absolutely need to look after our people better than we used to. But on the other hand, I've personally come up from the school of crack on. And so there's an element of me that occasionally can just go, oh, you don't know your born, mate, crack on. But you can't do that. So we are much, much better. We are much more encouraging of people as Taz has said, carving a bit of time out for yourself, you know, and again, it's a confidence thing, I get it. But if somebody says, actually, I'm finishing at 5 today because I really want to go to that yoga class, but I'll check in on my emails again when I come back, you knock yourself out, you go. But if you know, if there's a disaster or something needs to be sorted before we're on air tomorrow or call time tomorrow, it's always a good thing that, you know, as a producer, particularly as an exec producer, that somebody is picking that up. It's my job to make sure somebody's picking it up. And if somebody has said to me, it's okay, I've got that, I'm going to yoga, but I'll be back at 7 and I'll do it then, fine, I can eat my dinner.
That's a good thing, yeah, that's come out of, I think, working from home and remotely. I think a lot of companies have recognised that you can have a work-life balance, you can, you know, work remotely. We don't need to see you at a desk at 9 or 10 a.m. Until 7 p.m. because you're at home. You can take the dog for a walk or put your washing on, but ultimately, you know, it's a grown-up job. We're going to trust you to get the job done.
Exactly.
If you know, if an element of your role hasn't been done, it'll be noticed.
Yeah.
You know, something's not being booked.
It goes back to teamwork.
It's such a thing, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
If there's a bit of a weak cog, then it'll be flushed out very, very swiftly. And we never look at that weak cog and say they're rubbish. We might look at that weak cog and go, why?
Yeah.
What's the problem there? What can we do to support it? And if ultimately it comes down to this just isn't a job for you, we will also tell you that. But we will try and support first and foremost. But it is, you know, you are flushed out quite quickly if you think you can, you know,
hide in the corner. There's nowhere to hide. You've got to kind of pull your weight. And I think that also that self-care, that advice, and I don't know that it's for women per se, but it seems to be a little bit more pertinent to women, that we're not always very good at saying no, we can't do it, or that we, you know, so just being able to really feel, and I agree with you, Sarah, that kind of grows within confidence, but being able to just kind of manage your time and say that I'm going to do it at this point, but, you know, being able to manage your time and knowing self-care. And we've seen this with some of the sporting events. Is it Simone Biles, was it yesterday?
Yeah.
She was going to step out. We had the tennis the other day. Was it Naomi decided?
Osaka did it.
Yeah. So this whole thing about self-care is becoming really apparent. Now, I've got a question. I really want to get in because I know, because she's very passionate. She says that my passion is more motorsports, particularly Formula One. Now, I'd ideally like to start as a runner in a production team. Do you have any advice or any tips on how I might be able to do that?
I worked at
please.
Sky for a number of years. It's intense. It's brilliant. I think contacting the independents, I think Whisper now look after Channel 4's coverage of Formula One. So contacting, finding out who the production companies are. And like I said, contacting those PMs that work there. You can see them on credits, you can find them on Google, contacting them and finding out how you could even, you know, they're not going to fly you out to America or, you know, Abu Dhabi tomorrow, but they could get you in the office to start, you know, just get your foot in the door, get to know people, work hard, you know, do admin.
Learn your trade.
And learn your trade, network. So really contacting people within those independents. So I'm sure it's Whisper and
Whisper and Sky. That's where you need to go. You know, and don't discount Sky. I mean, you know,
absolutely.
Sky, they're doing a superb job on the Formula One in many ways. And it's a really good. It's hard work at Sky, you know, but they get you involved, and it's a good team, and you know they need good all-rounders to keep it going. It's a big machine that needs feeding, you know. That's the other thing. You go back to my first comment, just because somebody says no first of all, don't think that that's no forever. You know,
absolutely, because opportunities arise. We've got before I kind of ask you guys to round up with maybe your best tip or advice in terms of somebody wanting to work in sports. Just wanted to ask you, we've got a question about presenting in sports. How feasible or how easy is it to move from a production role into a presenting role in sports?
It's not an easy one. It's not, you know, it's never easy to step forward, you know, from behind the camera to front of camera. And it is another one that needs an awful lot of tenacity. And it goes back to tenacity and confidence and believing in your ability to do it. But that said, you know, I've had I know 2 production assistant, production secretaries, coordinators who've gone in front of the camera. I've got a producer at the moment who's just made that jump from behind the camera to in front of the camera. So those opportunities are there, but again, it comes back to what Taz was saying earlier. You take those opportunities as they arise, and you make sure that people know that that's what you'd like to do. You know, there's always a chance to give people a screen test, and there's always the chance to sort of push people forward if there's an opportunity, but it isn't as if we sort of say, we employ a big cohort of presenters and reporters. We don't, you know, but what we do quite often do in sport is a producer or an AP will voice a piece. So, you know, if it's a small package or a news package or something like that, or a bit of content, if they speak well and they can do it, we'll get them to voice their own pieces. So there's a sort of a breakthrough in that way. But it is, again, it's about being very clear about what your end goal is. You know, and also, again, being quite thick-skinned, because some people can do it and are an absolute natural, and others it's not so natural, and you need to really listen to the feedback that you're given. It's been given to you for a reason. It's feedback. We help produce reporters and presenters all the time, but it's, you know, when you say to anybody, you know, anybody who's successful, what would you have told your 25-year-old self? And invariably they will say, I wish I'd just known that I've got more to learn. Yeah, and that I need to listen a bit more and have confidence in myself, but know that I'm still learning, because there's never a stupid question. And there really, in our industry, there isn't anybody that you couldn't ask. There's always somebody that's happy to help you.
That's so important. That's so important. And for you, would you echo that in terms of wanting to get into presenting, in particular for in production?
I have never met anyone that's come from a background of producing and then got, oh, actually at Sky I did. Sky. On Soccer AM, there were quite a few producers who then did the voiceovers and made their own VTs and wrote the theme tune, sang the theme tune. So, but ultimately, you need to be an expert. You need to be good on screen. You need to, you know, I think it helps a lot of reporters and presenters nowadays, where they know what they're talking about from a research background point of view, not just I can read auto cue. You know, if you're going to present in sport, you need to do your research. You know, the best presenters I work with now will go to bed early. They will get their Pritt stick out, cut out their research, have their notes. Literally, you need to know what you're doing. You can't fake it. You can't just be a pretty face or just have a good voice. You need to really have good knowledge of what you're speaking about.
So that would be one of the areas where you definitely have to be a kind of expert or passionate when
you have to do your work.
Yeah, you have to
do your work. Because I mean, there are commentators, there are presenters. You know, we've got it on mountain bikes at the moment. Actually, it was one of our producers. There was an opportunity for a reporter. She really wanted to do it. You know, and so the client was very happy to give her a chance, and she's actually just about to go freelance, so she can just be doing reporting. That's the other thing you need to remember. You know, it's a freelancer's role as a reporter. You're very, very fortunate if you are taken on by a company and paid to do that role. So it's either a string to your bow, or it's your job and you're a freelancer. So that's the thing to think there. But it's hard work being a presenter or a reporter. Being in front of the camera is really hard work. More than ever, you have to be authentic. You have to, or if you're not, you have to make sure that you've done your work so that people believe when you're talking to them, you're speaking to them in their language. Because you use one terminology, one little bit wrong in your terminology, people will notice it. So, you know, it's about doing that. And it's about being really interested in sport. If you are really, really interested in being the next David Attenborough, don't go looking for a job in football. You know, make sure that you are swimming in the pond in which you want to fish. Just be in the right place, and again, just keep putting yourself forward. Opportunities arise, you've just got to be ready to catch them when they come.
I mean, that rounds it up lovely. I mean, we're about to close. I was going to say, kind of, any final thoughts, any last minute pieces of advice that you would offer to people wanting to work in that space? And I'll start with you, Taz, and then go. Sarah, what you just said was probably, that was amazing, but it'd be interesting if there's any other final thoughts. So Taz, your final piece of advice?
I mean, I'm not quite sure what kind of audience we have here.
Yeah.
If newly coming into sport, or if they're moving across different areas of TV, but I think just persistence. I think we touched on it earlier. I think we changed subject, but if there's an opportunity to work in TV, full stop, and you're dedicated, you really want to get into sport, but there's an opportunity and you're able to get into TV, get into TV if you know nothing about how to work, how to make TV, because that's what you want to have, and then move over to sport. Obviously, you want to go down the sporting line. That's really your key and your passion. But going back to what we said at the beginning, if you just happen to know someone or happen to see a job as a runner somewhere in TV and you've never worked in TV before, get your foot in the door, learn the lingo. There's a lot of TV jargon that kind of goes from one genre to another that's still relevant. So just get in however you can, really, and persistent. Collect names, Google people, get in touch with them. LinkedIn, I think, is brilliant nowadays. It's literally, I think it's got me 2 of my jobs, or at least, yeah, it has. I think it's a great way to connect with people and get in touch with them. And most people will contact you back, and so.
Yeah, Sarah, for you.
It would be, what I would just say is, I just noticed a very another quote in here about, what appeals to me about TV is the side of it is the travel. Particularly in sport, we work globally. There's a lot of travel. If you think that you're going to travel and go and see, the great, fantastic landmarks of this planet on which we live, choose another job. Earn lots and lots of money, go and work in finance, get lots of money behind you, get on an aeroplane, take yourself off on holiday. I could list the countries around the world that I think, oh, fantastic, I'm going here. I've literally gone from the airport, which could be anywhere, in a taxi or a bus, to a location, which could be anywhere, to a bunker, which could be anywhere, into an OB van, which could be anywhere, gone back to my hotel and gone home again. The travel is just a pain in the arse. It's not glamorous. If you want to see the world, get a job where you earn lots and lots of money and go on holiday. If you want to really work with some amazing people and use your adaptability and your flexibility and have something where you can think on your feet and really contribute in a meaningful way to working with a team and meet some really cool people along the way, sport's fantastic. Go for it. But if your reason for going it is because you want to go and see what Mexico City looks like, good luck at having a look at that car park, because that's all I ever saw. And somebody nicked my laptop. That's the reality of it. And you'll be really pleased when you land back at Heathrow and think, good, I can go to bed for a couple of hours. That's fab.
That is fantastic. Thank you all so much. Our time has kind of run out. We could have kind of gone on forever discussing. If any of you guys feel like you didn't get any questions answered, or you want some more tips or information, just drop me or Rio a line, and we'll direct your questions to the right place and make sure that we get it answered. Thank you so much, Taz. Really appreciate you coming in, and Sarah, and obviously the lovely Rio, who's always here and just kind of supporting. It's amazing to have you here. Don't forget, you can follow us on our socials. It's at TV Collective on Insta, Facebook. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. And you can keep in touch with all the latest goings on. Next week, we release the results of our best places to work survey. So it'll be really interesting to see how that all goes. But thank you guys so much for coming. It was amazing, fantastic. And really informative, particularly to me, because I've never worked in sports, and it was so informative, just interesting in understanding what, you know, the different spaces that you can work in. So thank you so much. We'll be back again in early September with another career clinic. And until then, guys, enjoy this summer and have a fantastic one. And we'll see you.
Thanks very much, Simone.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody that was listening.
Bye.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.